Welcome to the InStory Show. I'm Devorah Spilman, your host, and this season we're focusing on empaths and how to turn your sensitivities into your strengths. And today I'm thrilled to welcome Veronica Krestow. Hi, Veronica.
Hello. It is so good to be here.
So before we dive in, I'm going to read a little bit about you. Veronica Krestow is the author and creator of The Diamond Process, using everyday triggers to awaken the treasure within, a 7-step transformational system serving thousands of clients and students worldwide. After 22 years of learning from masters in the fields of spiritual psychology, presence mastery, yoga, philosophy, psychology, and the expressive arts, plus 15 years of experience in the field as a successful transformational coach, Veronica has discovered the vast difference between mediocre coaching and masterful coaching. In addition to facilitating transformational retreats and online courses, she passionately focuses on her time training Diamond Process life coaches globally. And now we are thrilled to have you here all to ourselves for a little bit. So where I like everybody to start, as everyone knows, is with your story. A little bit of what it was like for you when you were a child. And partly we're doing that so that the listeners can find themselves in your stories, because often we didn't know about empaths and highly sensitive people and all these things, and yet we were that. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about what it was like for you growing up and what happened to you.
Yeah, I love that question because as a child, I had no language or even concept of what being highly sensitive was. I just had my experience. And everyone around me, I was growing up in Miami, Florida, and nobody around me seemed to be sensitive. And actually, as a kid, my dad, who I love and adore, would call me Sensitive Susie because every single thing affected me, everything. You know, I remember walking into a restaurant and there were deer heads hanging on the walls of this lodge like trophies. And I literally fell to my knees and started hysterically crying. Like I literally couldn't grasp that. And their eyes and the looks on their faces, it just completely crushed me. And everyone else seemed to be fine with things like that. And that was a regular occurrence. The challenge was that my mom was emotionally unstable, both two amazing parents, but my father being extremely practical and reliable and always available and just an incredible super dad. And my mom was emotionally unstable, and she had some diagnoses, which I have opinions on today. Had she had the right environment and the right love and the wisdom and information we have today around being highly sensitive, it would probably be a very different experience for her. However, as a kid, seeing her as emotionally unstable led to a divorce between my parents and some pretty tragic experiences where she went homeless. And it was just a really, really messy upbringing in terms of it was really polarized. I saw one side, the masculine, super clear and strong and has thick skin and able to move through life really powerfully, financially abundant. And then there was my mom's side, which was so sensitive, financially distraught, incapable of creating anything on her own in this world, going homeless, just all over the map, unreliable. And I made a very solid decision as a kid, this is the way to go. Anytime somebody labeled me as sensitive or emotional, I took it as an insult. And so I learned how to release myself from being sensitive, or not release myself, but bury myself behind a mirage or behind a facade of, you know, all the things that made me popular or powerful or lovable, which was the way my smarts in school, the way I dressed, the way I looked, my popularity, my humor, whatever it was. So everything that represented emotion and being in any way like my mother, it was like, bye. And anything that looked like success and power and solidity, I really built a personality around.
And, I think this is a very classic story. We all have our own unique version of it, but this sense of being naturally sensitive and then having to completely shut it down.
Yeah.
And there's a very high, it turns out that the cost is quite high for doing that. And I think what's amazing now is because all of a sudden there's this just opening to awareness about this more than ever before. I think, like, therefore that's my series. I never had a series on this before. It's starting to give people the ability to heal and to have a new story. So tell us a little bit about, for a while, you probably didn't feel like you were paying a cost. You probably thought you were fine.
Yeah, I had no concept. I mean, all of this happens to each of us really subconsciously. Whether one is an empath or highly sensitive or not, it's really, what are we loved and praised for, and what are we diminished for, or what are we judged for? So I didn't have, at that time in my life, I just knew that there were certain things that got me attention and love and acceptance. And those things were definitely not being emotional. So I didn't realize I was doing it at the time. I only knew that I was moving towards traits and really trying to find a way not to feel so much. And for many of us, that happens through addiction, or that happens through addiction, whatever kind. I mean, really, it's the only alternative. And the biggest addiction I had was really perfectionism. Trying to get acceptance through getting everything right, doing everything perfectly, looking perfect, talking perfectly, acting perfectly, just having the right friends, having the right everything. I checked everything off the list going through this journey of my life, only to eventually realize that the cost, as you're saying, which is so absolutely true, was that I looked incredible on the surface, and inside I felt like I was dying. And I had checked it all off the list, and inside I felt really ugly. I felt inner hatred. I felt just constant battling of myself and my mind. And on the outside, I was beaming with joy and smiles. And on the inside, I didn't know what to do with the pain I felt inside, which would get triggered in really inconvenient moments. Like, I don't know if anyone can relate to this, but I mean, my partner at the time, looking at me looking in another direction, and just suddenly feeling like, so angry, or like this massive rage coming out for absolutely no reason. So the cost is really everything that gets dumped in the shadow claims us until we're willing to embrace it and step into our wholeness.
Wow. It's so, I think it's so hard for us to hear these stories in a way, because I think we so don't want it to be like that.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's such a common story, that whole way that so many creative, sensitive, empathic, introverted people shut down the truth of who they are for all different reasons. And then the cost.
Yeah, massive cost.
So, yeah, and I think, I think the brilliance of these series and these stories and us sharing this is that you can have a different story about that cost.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? The cost eventually gets so high that we cannot help but pay ourselves back. And what I mean by that, or win ourselves back, as Muji says, so when the cost is so high that we are actually considering, like for me, the cost was so high that I was questioning my life. I didn't want to be here anymore. It was way too painful. When the cost got that high, I didn't have an alternative but to win myself back, but to turn towards myself and actually figure out, okay, I'm the common denominator in all the painful experiences in my life. I'm the problem. Like, if I'm the problem, the good news is I'm also the solution. I can change this. I can transform this. The question is how. So that, what I personally did is I basically left my fiance. I left my work. I left everything behind. I even cut all my hair off. I, put weight over my yoga body that I had spent years sculpting and creating. And I just let myself fall apart. I let myself go towards the pain. I let myself in the redwoods. I left LA, Los Angeles, and I went to the Redwood Forest. I lived in a home, because oftentimes people ask me when they read the diamond process, like, were you like living in a tree? I was in an actual house, but I was by myself in solitude. And during that time, I would just unroll my yoga mat. It was actually permanently unrolled. And I sat in kind of a Gestalt therapy, or what I call today medicinal dialogue, with the different facets of myself, the parts of myself that I was so terrified anyone would see. You know, the one that was awkward, the one that was so insecure, the one that was terrified of life, the one that felt worthless and meaningless, like there was no point in existing, like I was taking up space. Or even the bold one, the one that's like outrageous or, you know, wildly sensual, or, you know, all these different facets of myself that I learned to tame in order to fit into that construct of perfect, or what society had told me was perfect. And in that process of having the space and being in that that deep intimacy with myself, I started to, I basically bawled my eyes out, and I let every emotion, like, you know, you got to feel it to heal it. All the feelings that got dumped in the not okay to express in front of people category came out in this safe space. And I feel like it's all of our sacred tasks as empaths, as highly sensitives, as light workers, as healers, as coaches, as mothers, to do this work in whatever way you see fit, to really befriend ourselves and embrace the parts of ourselves that are starving for love. Because what I found was, even though I was in the most beautiful relationship, even though I was in this, it was such a passionate partnership, beautiful, so much love, traveling the world first class, like the most incredible adventures, and deep, deep, deep love, like the storybook. I never felt loved by this man in my past, because the parts of me that were deemed unlovable were residing in my shadow. And that's what I mean by they claim us if they're not dealt with, because I couldn't see through clear, loving eyes, because I was seeing through the filter of I'm not lovable. Because that part inside, or parts or facets of the diamond, so to speak, were buried deep, deep in the shadow. And those parts are like, I'm not lovable. So we'll continue to see life through a skewed lens until we're willing to actually feel through them, be with them, love them, and embrace them like a mother would embrace every single one of her children.
Wow. And so this is what started to happen to you when you were alone?
Yeah.
So I just want you to say one more little bit about how you managed to make that decision to go be by yourself. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people, I think, feel bumped up against what's really hard and just stay there.
Mm-hmm. You know, when the triggers got so frequent, or like every hour I was triggered by something, or I was just like, I felt like I had no skin, and everything was like I said to you earlier, the wind would blow and I'd get triggered. I'd like fall over everything. Life was just it was too much. When I got to that place, I realized I've got to go somewhere where I feel safe enough to do this work. And it honestly wasn't a hard decision. It was just a necessity. It was almost a live or die, not to be dramatic, but that's really what it felt like, a live or die situation. And also the redwoods were just calling me so deeply. I had been there to the Redwood Forest, and I was in Los Angeles at the time. So it was more so my soul, you know, when the triggers get so loud in your life and the pain becomes unbearable, there's a doorway that's opening, a doorway of transformation. And also the diamond doorway, the true self is asking to emerge, the full potential wants to birth. And all the triggers it's like, you know how we've heard life is not happening to you, it's happening for you. What that means to me is that every single trigger is like a kiss from the beloved, from source, saying, sweetheart, this is here to help you let go of what you've believed yourself to be all this time, so that who you really are can shine through. So it was really that led me to finally just leap and go to those woods.
I asked you because I think what you said is so important, that that you felt this calling to
Yeah.
the redwoods. That what happens, I think, is that pain gets so hard that I think what happens is people become able to actually listen to that other voice, that deep, true knowing. So I asked Veronica to say it so that anybody listening who's hearing the call of that deep, true voice will feel encouraged to trust it. Because that, and the other thing you said that's so beautiful is how there becomes this opening.
Mm.
And so there is this opening, and not everybody has to go be all alone to do it, because there's a lot more knowledge now and a lot more resource so that you can have buddies on the way. But it's also this, just offering this tremendous support to people for us to trust this other way of knowing.
Yeah, and I want to actually speak to what you're saying right now. It's important everyone hears this. At the end of my journey, there was a point where I couldn't do it alone. And I had actually hit like the precipice, or the valley, like the valley of all valleys. And I thought it was noble to struggle on my own. Like I just somehow, that was in my old unconscious beliefs, or what my husband and I call in our work in the coach training program, the limited liability or the limited life contract, which was that I have to do it all on my own to be like a strong woman and noble and powerful. But really what I realized is I needed someone who was on the other side to pull me over. And so that's when I actually met one of my first mentors, Steve Seiler, who's an incredible Jungian analyst. And he helped me reclaim my life. And as he calls it, leave home, like leave that old story and develop my own power in this life and get on my own 2 feet. So I just share that because if there's anyone listening who feels really isolated and alone and like it's noble or better somehow to do it on your own, that's not true at all. And if you have an ally, like someone like Devorah or somebody you really resonate with who really could support you in breaking through, invest in that. I mean, it was the greatest investment I could have made was getting that support, because there's an acceleration. It became very speedy and quick from that point forward.
Yeah. And it's multidimensional. And what's happening now is that we're in an opening, and these stories, I hope, are opening this door wider for a lot of our listeners. Okay, so keep going in your story. Every so often I'm like, I want you to go deeper into those turning point moments.
Yeah.
I like people to bring them out because it helps the people listening understand how it happened. When we just tell people what happened, well, I was really miserable and now I'm great. Well, how did you do that? So
yeah.
Those turning point moments are really powerful to unpack, which is so why I asked you to go into that a little more.
Yeah, well, that yoga mat, the medicinal dialogue, which eventually became the diamond process, what I found was I was going through these 7 steps again and again and again out of sheer necessity. And they came from tools I had learned because I had gotten a master's in spiritual psychology. I was on the path. I was fascinated by psychology and spiritual path and healing. And so fortunately I had this arsenal of sacred tools to use on myself. But I kept using the same 7 over and over again. So as I was on the yoga mat, and I would just sit with whatever was coming up, and I would give myself permission to just voice it and let it out, to speak the unspeakable and create this new relationship with myself where anything goes. Any part of me is worthy of love and taking the spotlight. And I remember there was this one time, which was the hardest moment. I just remember the inner critic was just beating me. Like I just was so berating myself, and it was just a very, very painful moment in time. And I remember expressing from that place of deep, I'm sorry to call it hatred, but it was self-hatred. And I remember looking up from my teary face up in the mirror on the floor doing this process, which is now called the diamond process. And I saw my short hair, and I had gained some weight, and the voice got so loud. The critical voice got so loud, basically saying, you should have married Robert, you should have gone down that path. No one's ever going to love you from here. You've wasted your whole life. Look at you. Look what happened to you. Your only value was you looked a certain way and you all that's fading. And now look at you. You're going to be alone. So the voice kept escalating and escalating and escalating and escalating until finally I literally cracked and I just started to pray. And I stopped trying to do it all myself in that dialogue process. And I actually prayed a prayer I had never prayed before. And it was this prayer of, please, I was actually asking to exit this planet. But what really ended up happening, I asked God, I didn't have the capacity to do something like that, but I was praying to God, why all this pain? How can you help me break through this? If I can't break through this pain, please take me. But what opened in that moment was such a cry so deep and so personal that a part of me emerged that had been buried under the mask that I had hidden behind my entire life. And it was the most pure essence. It's what I call the inner essence. And I suddenly got this image of a baby, a naked baby on a marble floor. And I realized that baby was me, that was desperate for me to reclaim her, desperate for me to love her. She was just alone in this world. And that was the sensitive part of me that feels everything, that doesn't have cognition yet, that only knows how to experience life through the senses. And something switched in me in that deep personal cry. Really, when I was wishing for death, my life reestablished itself. When I embraced that baby that we all are, that pure presence. And from that place, for the first time in my life that I remember consciously, I felt safe. And so what transpired is I basically, and this is available to all of us, what happened in that moment is I lifted into the dimension of myself that is not the beautiful one, the ugly one, the sweet one, the dumb one, all the different facets, they're all the labels in society. I arose to the dimension of myself, which I refer to as the diamond self, which is the one that embraces the whole, which is the one that is present through all circumstances, untouched, unbreakable. The word diamond means unbreakable. And there's a dimension in you, me, we, all of us, that is really what I believe our true purpose is, to awaken to this dimension. And it's through our pain that we actually learn how to, not even learn how to, but it's like an energetic shift into the truth of who we are, so that we can embrace the pain rather than be tumbled around by it, believing it's who we are. So I will say the inner child, especially that pure baby that you, me, we once were, that work is profound, to welcome that dimension back. And anytime, as a tool for everyone who's listening, this helped me so much then, it helps me all the time now, is when there is a feeling of pain or anxiety. And by the way, anxiety is not an emotion. Anxiety is the evidence of repression of emotion. Anxiety is what is the result of repressing hard feelings. So we shake because we're having to push all these emotions down all day long and trying to maintain a mask. It's exhausting, and we shake, and it's too much, and we know we can't do it for long, so tremendous fear comes up. So the tool is, when you feel triggered, you go to work, somebody says something, or someone looks at you the wrong way, or you said something you feel was not whatever it was. Ask yourself, number one, what do I feel right now? Name it. Name the feeling. There's 4 primary emotions: sadness, joy, fear, and anger. Which of those 4 primary feelings do you feel? Name it. Ooh, I feel hurt. I feel sad. Yeah, I feel sad right now. Second question, where do you feel that feeling in your physical body? Your physical body is a doorway into the present moment. It will always guide you home. So second question, where do I feel it in my body? You just this is going to help befriend the body. Notice, where do I feel it? And as a highly sensitive, this is one of our superpowers. We can feel everything. So you'll be able to locate it. And if you can't do that quickly, it's a skill I highly encourage you to develop, because it is something that we all have access to. We'll never be able to think our way through pain. The only way through pain, thinking just activates the reptilian brain, which creates more terror and more panic. So more, the trauma gets reactivated. The only way to break through the trauma or to heal the trauma or the pain is to feel it. So we've been talked out of feeling, just like I was talked out of feeling as a little girl, or I bought into feeling as wrong or bad or not good enough. So where do I feel it in my body? And this is our work. It's so simple. I feel that pain or sadness in my heart. Okay. Or it might be the throat or the lower back. It might be your ear. It might be the belly. It could be anywhere, your toes. Where do I feel that? Oh, I feel it right here. Third step, place your hands there and breathe. So number 1, name it. Number 2, locate it. Number 3, be with it. Breathe into it, be with it. The reason I suggest putting the hands there is that we're mammals, and the body, the nervous system, cortisol levels drop. The stress hormone drops when we have physical touch. That's why hugs are so nice. But we can give that to ourselves. And then the work is to migrate from thinking, like don't let the feeling become thinking, and just stay with the feeling. So that is something you can slip into your back pocket at any time. Name it, locate it, breathe into it. And the fourth bonus here is I always ask myself, am I willing to allow this feeling to exist? Notice how that shifts. It's a bridge question. It's a powerful code to share. Like it's a question that will, it's not like forcing an affirmation. I feel great. That's BS. If you have stuff going on in the shadow, that has to be addressed. So a nice bridge statement into releasing and healing and integrating is, am I willing to allow this feeling to exist? I don't have to like it, but can I just start with allowing it to be here? Become curious about it.
Wow. That's powerful. And it's so often the case that these simple tools are so powerful. I find the same thing. All right, so now you've shared a little bit of what you're up to in the world and how powerful it is. Tell us a little bit about your free gift so people can take the next step, which I know they'll want to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. So one of the things that I've found on my journey that I was lacking clarity, right, at that time in my life when we're highly sensitive, we have all these desires, we're empathic, we're picking up all these other people's opinions and society shoulds. The question is, what do you really want? What is your specific code? What is your specific path? So I have a gift that I created with my husband, Jason. It's called the 5 Degrees of Clarity Masterclass. It's a deep dive into getting, first of all, crystal clear on what you truly want and how to get what you truly want right now. And I do mean right now, I mean instantly, and it'll make sense once you are in the master class. So yeah, make sure to have a notebook and a pen and light a candle, have sacred space, because we'll be taking you through a deep dive experience with that.
Perfect. That's so great. I really love that. All right. So just as we're getting ready to wrap up, maybe leave us with a few last words of wisdom.
Yeah. So if you are empathic or highly sensitive, which I imagine you are, or even if you don't even know what that means and you don't label yourself as that, however, you are a deeply feeling person who senses that there's more for you in this life, who senses that there is another way, that, life is too difficult or too hard. I encourage you to actually shift that. And what if you look at the reality of life? The hard things that we go through are literally the pressure and the heat that is required in order to actualize your unique full potential into this world. So there is a gift within you. There's a superpower within you, your sensitivity. I love how you said this earlier before we recorded, Devorah. You said something about pathology. It's like your sensitivity is not a pathology. It is your superpower. It is your superpower. And our world today desperately needs all of us, not just me, not just Devorah, not just some of the people watching. You are needed to really truly love yourself on a level deep and in the self-care necessary for you to feel so incredibly good in your own skin that that unique gold that's within you has the opportunity to emerge and shine into our world.
Beautiful. So I always say when something beautiful is like that to people listening to, just breathe that in, you know, breathe those beautiful words in as a truth. And, you know,
Because you're so beautiful. Like everyone watching, you're so amazing. There's only one of you. Like it's incredible.
so we have a Facebook group with the InStory Show series, and we would love for you to bravely show up and share your inspiration, your questions, connect with us. We'll be in the group, the experts will be in the group, and we want you to take this in, trust it, and begin to share your gifts and see how they are your superpowers, they are your strengths. So beautiful. Thank you so much, Veronica.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you to everyone.
In the world. So beautiful.
Aww.
So everybody listening, as I always say in parting, remember to go out in the world, share your story, live your purpose, and be a blessing. Bye, folks.